everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis, a breaking news reporter here at Forbes. Joining me now is Mathew Moura, Senior Vice President of Strategy at Teaching Matters. Mathew, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
I'm grateful for the conversation today, Mathew, because you've worked with a program we're going to be talking about at length, and that is Head Start. Last month, in a draft budget, the Trump administration floated the possibility of cutting funding for the program, and since then, HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. testified before a Senate subcommittee, vowing that his department will preserve the program and not cut it. So first, to start off the conversation, can you explain exactly what the program is and who Head Start serves?
Yeah, so most parents are going to access childcare through private childcare services or some type of subsidized childcare service. That's something where, based on income, they'll be paying a portion or they'll be paying the full amount. Also, parents have access to universal pre-K, which is in the public schools. So it's almost indistinguishable from a parent's perspective to dropping your kid off for kindergarten, picking them up between 2:30 and 3 o'clock. Head Start is very different. Head Start is an income-eligible program. It's full day, year-round, providing what's known as wraparound care. In addition to Head Start, just to say, probably its biggest distinction compared to those other aspects of childcare or early childhood education is it's a family program. The unit of care is the family as well as the child. So when you enter a Head Start service, from a parent's perspective, you're given family support. You're helped with how to navigate and secure adequate and sustainable housing, medical care access. There's a big focus on nutrition and mental health services. It's really a whole child program. And nationwide, it serves almost 1 million students.
It impacts a lot of students, and I've had conversations with people from both sides of the aisle talking about just how critical access to childcare is. So I know that when the Trump budget draft was initially floated, there was an uproar over potential Head Start cuts. Why do you think the administration reversed course and the program is not being cut now, and RFK Jr. said, we are preserving this?
Yeah, I will say we're all very thankful that the program is being preserved. I think there's 3 big reasons. One, the program serves the entire country. 49% of Head Starts exist within rural congressional districts. It's not an exclusively, program for metropolitan areas. It's the entire country being served. 2, it has results, not just, immediate results, but results that have been showcased over the decades since its inception. I think 3, those results have a very clear monetary basis, both in terms of the amount of money that it saves society. You'll oftentimes hear something along the lines of, for every dollar spent in Head Start, society or the United States sees about $7 in return, which is the low estimate. It's about $7 to $15 it's been calculated. That is a very hard economic benefit to walk back from.
So, and you said that in your letter to the editor in the Washington Post. You said, not only is this beneficial for the students and the families this serves, it also helps the taxpayers. And I want to read part of what you wrote. You wrote this, quote, last month, the White House proposed to eliminate funding for Head Start, a program that has provided critical early childhood education and family support services since 1965. Though the administration has since reversed course and did not include the cuts in its proposed 2026 budget, the program is still at risk. Why are you raising alarm bells here? Why do you think that the program is still at risk?
I think one of the biggest risks for Head Start, or one of the questions we can ask ourselves, is how can Head Start get to such amazing results considering the fact that it's underfunded? So for 800,000 is about the number of Head Start students that are served each year. Compared to most public school systems, that's less than 1/3 per child. So for a Head Start, it's about $13,000 per child. I think the national average for K-12 is almost $30,000 per child. So it is kind of always under this threat because it's an underfunded and continuously underfunded program. So to take any sort of resources from it, or to add confusion to the system where schools and centers and all of these care providers don't know when they're going to be say, reimbursed for their services, when their next, grant cycle is going to be. That just adds a lot of stress to an already extremely stressed system.
And Senator Tammy Baldwin, when she was questioning Secretary Kennedy in a Senate subcommittee hearing, she said that her state of Wisconsin's concerned about what she described as the uncertainty and instability surrounding the program under the Trump administration. In your position at Teaching Matters, is that something you've experienced? Is that something you've witnessed, this uncertainty and instability when it comes to Head Start?
Yeah, so I've actually been in Head Start services and supporting that. I was a Head Start teacher. I was a Head Start Center director for the past 15 years. There has never been a year in which there hasn't been a question of what is this program going to look like and is funding secure? I will also say, just thinking about like with the pandemic, for example, Head Starts didn't close. Childcares didn't close. In fact, those are some of the only services that remained specifically for first responders. Like, it is our duty as a country to make sure that we are investing in these programs and making sure that we are there for them in the way that they have been for us for decades.
And I want to read part of the back and forth between Senator Baldwin and Secretary Kennedy because I think it's eye-opening. She said that her state of Wisconsin saw funding delays in certain Head Start programs, and at least one was temporarily shuttered while it was waiting for this funding. And she asked the secretary this, quote, "What would you say to a parent who shows up for child care or for Head Start and the doors are closed?" RFK Jr. said, "I would be very sad." Baldwin continued and said, "What is causing delays in Head Start funding?" And Kennedy said, "I fought very hard to make sure that Head Start gets all of its funding next year." And Baldwin then responded, "Well, we need it this year. Why are there delays now?" And Kennedy said, "I don't know that there are, Senator. I will look into it, but there should not be any delays." When you hear that, are you surprised that he's surprised that there are funding delays? Because you said this isn't necessarily Trump administration specific. There's this uncertainty every year.
Yeah, I'm not surprised whatsoever. And, in fairness to everyone involved, this is a wildly complex system. It is not the case that a child care center operates, has, one check that comes into the mail and pays for everything. These are, one, reimbursement systems, and two, it's either directly through the federal government, sometimes it's through what we call super grantees or super delegates. There's, probably 100 different ways that a child care center or a Head Start center is going to access that funding. It's not simple. If the argument is to make it simple, that would be fantastic. Nobody in the field would be against that. I will say, though, one of the challenges has been, say, shuttering the Head Start field offices. Those offices provide grantee support, they provide compliance, maintaining. That lack of infrastructure or the question around that infrastructure adds to, again, a very confusing system.
And you want, obviously, to protect Head Start, and you're saying the funding needs to be there, but there's other questions aside from the money, or not questions rather, but things I think you would want to see changed to make that instability, that uncertainty go away when it comes to the infrastructure. I mean, what would some of those changes you propose be, because you've worked so intimately with Head Start?
I would say that first and foremost that comes to mind, simply funding Head Start at the level we do regular, quote unquote, public education would be transformative to the entire country. Oftentimes, when I had said before with Head Start, it's a family support program that has a child care component. That is why it has astounding outcomes over time for the family, for communities, for kids. In my, coming back from that background, my personal view, if the K to 12 space understood what Head Start does well and adopted a lot of those policies, you would see a transformed country. So first and foremost, just have a parity with what we put into the public school system for Head Start.
And I want to read another quote from RFK Jr. about Head Start that he said in a Senate subcommittee hearing. After he said he's not going to cut funding, he says that the department's goal is to, quote, emphasize healthy eating in Head Start and ensure the program continues to serve its 750,000 children and parents effectively. Overall, when you heard his testimony on Head Start, what he had to say about it, what do you make of that? Were you relieved? Were you skeptical when you hear that he wants to emphasize healthy eating? I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, one of the things that comes to mind that I think people might not be familiar with, Head Start exists in Health and Human Services. It does not exist under the Department of Education. And the reason for that is because it serves all these other functions for families. Nutrition, healthy eating habits, mental health support, all of that is within Head Start and a very clear sort of focus behind the program. So, I mean, he's the Secretary of Health and Human Services. That's why it's under his domain, and as it should be. That is something that, over the years, both parties have been very strong about making sure that it exists in that department.
And I know that you think that this is at risk. You're not the only person who thinks this program is at risk. I mean, what do you think the country look like if Head Start eventually does get cut? If Head Start, something does happen to it, continues to be this uncertainty, this instability, this confusion.
Yeah, I would say there's probably three big things that come to mind. One, just the logistical end. The size of Head Start is equivalent to the entire K to 8th grade in like Arizona or Virginia. So imagine just, shuttering down an entire state's education system overnight. That would be detrimental for a number of reasons. But two, it has economic consequences. First and foremost, somebody's going to pay that dollar. When we say 1 to 7, so what's going to happen to the other $6 now? Society does pay for that. You pay for it in higher property taxes. You pay for that in higher state budgets. You pay for that in terms of what happens when folks lose income, when folks thinking about the other effects of Head Start, things like lower, rates going to prison or recidivism. Somebody is going to pay that bill.
Do you think that's what's missing from this conversation too, aside from just how beneficial and life-changing Head Start is to certain families, that this is actually a program that benefits the taxpayer?
Yeah, it absolutely benefits the taxpayer in two ways. Like, one, in terms of the savings, of course. But two, one of the reasons that Head Start has been under sort of the gun in terms of budgets over the years is the feeling that, maybe states should be the one who's paying for this as opposed to the federal government. The problem is, for anyone who pays property taxes, that that's not an inextinguishable kind of amount. Enough is enough at a certain point. So this is what I mean, like when you cut the program, somebody is still going to have to pay for this. States, on the whole, have to have a balanced budget each year, and these are the kinds of programs that get cut if they were solely based on state budgets. This is where the federal government does things best. It equalizes, it can invest in sort of a program over the long term and bring stability to the program.
And let's say instead of sitting across from me right now talking to me, Secretary Kennedy was right here and you had a chance to give him a message about Head Start, what would that message be?
Very simply, this is the program that people would pay top dollar otherwise to have their kids go to. It's wraparound care. It provides support over the long term. It provides, social, emotional, cognitive, everything you can think of. This is a program worth investing in.
Mathew Moura, I appreciate the conversation today. And as more matters relating to education and Head Start come to light, I hope we can continue conversations and break them down together. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much.